Welcome to the Cornell Big Red Zone preview for the Madison Square Garden duels, the Grapple at the Garden. Cornell heads down, number 8 in the country, to take on number 7 Missouri and number 2 Oklahoma State. It's going to be a tough weekend, Jeremy, but Cornell should be very excited to be a part of this Grapple at the Garden. It's the first time collegiate dual meets will be held at the world's most famous arena. What does this mean for the sport of wrestling?
Well, it's pretty cool if you look at, I looked up at the Garden the other day and just all the events that they've had over there between boxing matches and WWE wrestling and obviously the professional sports is pretty neat. But it's a great event. I think we'll get a lot of fans that normally wouldn't go to a wrestling event, that they see something at the Garden. And just anytime when you can get tens of thousands of fans into a wrestling arena, it's a great event. So.
It should be a great time, and now we'll go through and preview both duels in their entirety alongside my normal broadcast partner, Mr. Chris Harrington, and Cornell assistant coach Jeremy Spates. I'm Matt Schultz from 1160 ESPN. This Big Red Zone preview brought to you, as always, by our partners at Advantage Sport and Fitness and D Squared Construction, as well as Defense Soap. Defend what you have built. If you're a wrestler and you don't use Defense Soap, well, you're not protected. Let's just say that. Starting things off at 125, Cornell's very excited about the way Nahshon Garrett has been wrestling this year. He's currently ranked 10th in the country. He's going to have his hands full in that first match against Missouri, though. Alan Waters, ranked 4th in the country, just beat Nahshon 6-4 out in Las Vegas. But a close match, one we expect Nahshon to compete in. Chris, how do you think Nahshon will fare both against Alan Waters and against Tyler Durrell of Oklahoma State?
Well, if you start out, we've been talking for weeks now that Nahshon Garrett's one of the most exciting wrestlers in the country. We said he was going to be a bit of a surprise to the country. He's not a surprise anymore. He's great in all three positions. He lost to Waters in the finals of Vegas, but pretty much every swing call or swing position went Waters' way. I expect Nahshon to avenge a loss here. In the Oklahoma State match against Durrell, Cornell's going to need bonus points here. He's going to need to open up action. He's going to need to dictate pace on his feet for the Big Red to stay in contention in that match. So I think at this point, Waters, that's a toss-up match, but it should swing Garrett's way, and Durrell, they need 4 points in that match.
And we'll see how it plays out. At 133, Nick Arush is going to have his hands full, Coach Spates. He's currently ranked number 8th in the country. He did have a big pin of Brewer in that Oklahoma duel, but he's got number 6, Nathan McCormick from Mizzou, number 7, John Morrison from Oklahoma State. What do you like to see out of Nick this weekend?
I think those are both winnable matches for Nick. It's going to be a test for him. It's his first time down to weight in I think close to a month, so that'll be the biggest test. If he can wrestle the 7 minutes and go hard, I think Nick will beat both of these kids.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how that stacks up. Two very good matches there. At 141, number 10, Mike Nevinger, Cornell Jr. He's going to take on Nicholas Huckey or Cole Baumgartner or Trevor Jets. We're not really sure exactly who for Missouri yet, and same thing for Oklahoma State. They've got Julian Fikert, Case Garrison, and Josh Kindig all have wrestled at that weight for Oklahoma State. Chris, who do you think he'll face, and how do you think he'll fare?
My guess is he'll wrestle Josh against Mizzou. Again, this is another match that Cornell's going to need bonus points in, and definitely I think he'll wrestle Kindig. Kindig's a stud at 41, and that's a match, again, that Cornell needs to win if they're going to be in contention in that match.
And we'll see who ends up wrestling, but Mike Nevinger will be the higher seeded wrestler no matter who he does face. At 149, number 20, Chris Villawanga. He's going to have his work cut out for him as well. Not only does he have to take on 17th ranked Drake Hudeshelt of Missouri, but he's got the number 1 guy in the country against Oklahoma State, and that is Jordan Oliver, returning NCAA, I think that's 2nd place last year, but he was the champion in 2011, so he was an NCAA champion, finished 4th as a freshman too, so just an absolute stud. And Jordan Oliver, how do you think Chris can fare, Jeremy?
I think Chris is a lot better than he wrestles most of the time, and we're trying to convince him of that. Hudeshelt's a match that I think is a winnable match for us. Looking at Jordan Oliver, that's going to be a tough one. Jordan's just performed at a high level for such a long time, and he's a senior. That's going to be a tough win, but I think Chris can beat anybody in the country, and he just needs to go out and believe that.
And at 157, a newcomer to the Cornell line, well, an old comer, but he's back. Jesse Shanneman finally back from injury. Spent all of last year on the shelf with a knee injury and then got hurt again at the Binghamton Open. But thankfully this time a much less devastating, if you will, knee injury. So Shanneman is back in the Cornell lineup at 157, replacing Chris Dowdy, who did a great job filling in for him. He'll take on Kyle Bradley of Missouri and Alex Dieringer, 9th ranked for Oklahoma State. Coach Spates, how do you like to see, how's Jesse going to come back from this injury?
It's going to be interesting to see how Jesse comes back, actually. I think he'll do well, but it's always tough that first match back, and both those kids are very good. Kyle was an NCAA qualifier last year, Bradley from Missouri, and Derringer is a freshman, I believe, but he's been kind of tearing it up in the early season. So I think both winnable matches, but it's going to be real interesting to see how Jesse comes off of this injury.
Yeah, so keep an eye on Jesse Shannon at 157. At 165, I think we all know who's wrestling for the Big Red, number 1, Kyle Dake. He's going to have a couple of tough matches. He's got 2 ranked opponents. 13th ranked Zach Toll, who he already beat 14-3 earlier this season, just a couple of weeks ago. And then he'll take on number 3, Tyler Caldwell. And I know Oklahoma State fans have been very vocal about the fact that Caldwell should be grouped in with Kyle Dake and David Taylor. It's not just Dake and Taylor at 165. Caldwell should be in there too. Chris, should Caldwell be in there too?
Oh, absolutely. He's coming off an Olympic red shirt. Year before, he wrestled Jordan Burroughs, Olympic gold medalist, very close, twice, national finals. Look for Dake to really have to push pace. Caldwell's a really big kid. He's going to try to use his physicality and push Kyle around. But, I mean, how can you go against Kyle Dake?
It's very difficult. He already beat Toll, as we saw.
Absolutely. Yeah, he majored Toll at Vegas.
So we'd expect to see similar results for Kyle Dake against Missouri, against Oklahoma State. Could be a tough match for him, but again, it's Kyle Dake. You don't pick against the number 1 guy in the country, especially when he's a 3-time defending national champ. Well, at 174, Duke Pickett, the freshman's been wrestling very well for Cornell. He's going to have his hands full of it. Todd Porter of Missouri, a very competent wrestler, and of course number 1, Chris Perry of Oklahoma State, top wrestler in the land at 174. What can we expect out of Duke this weekend, Jeremy?
Well, I think we can actually expect to split some matches at 74. I think Marshall Pepperman's going to wrestle one of the matches, and Duke will wrestle the other. I think obviously Missouri's a very winnable match. This kid's a freshman, or he's a senior, I guess, huh? I don't think he's been in the lineup before this year, though. So I think that's a winnable match when you're going up against the number 1 kid. Once again, very tough. But hey, you're never out of it. That's the way we need to get a pin. So
absolutely. Well, we'll see if Duke or Marshall can get a pin of Chris Perry. You never know. You never know how it's going to play out. And at 184, one that I know a lot of Cornell fans are very excited for, the return of national champion Steve Bozak, defending national champ at 184. He's back finally in the Cornell lineup. He's ranked 2nd because Ed Ruth switched weights this year. He won at 174 for Penn State last year. He's moved up to 184. So he's first. Steve Bozak is 2nd. And he'll take on 2 ranked opponents, Will Bozak. Number 8, Mike Larson of Missouri. Number 13, Chris Chianuma of Oklahoma State. Chris, how do you expect that to go with Steve coming in fresh off this injury?
Watching Steve in the room, he looks as good as ever. Tough top game, really tough score on his feet. Look for him to be back to his old form on Sunday and push pace and get bonus points for the Big Red.
Can't wait to see it. Love watching Steve Bozak get those bonus points. Well, at 197, Jace Bennett, the Cornell sophomore. He's 13-5 on the season. He'll take on number 12, Brent Haynes, and number 7, Blake Rochelt from Oklahoma State. 2 tough matches for Jace. He's wrestled real well against some of the guys that are right in his range, but so far this year when he wrestles against guys that are ranked significantly higher than him, he's had a couple of missteps. Can we start to see some of those disappear for Jace?
Yeah, I think so. This is actually the longest time that Jace has put together in being in the starting lineup. He saw some time last year and the year before, but this is the first time that he's been in consistently. He's wrestled in 2 or 3, 4 or 5 events in a row. So I think that's going to be to his advantage. Obviously 2 very tough kids, but I think Jace is going to continue to get better throughout the year, and especially as he wrestles himself into shape, he's going to continue to get better. So it'll be interesting. That's a weight we need some wins.
Yeah,
both these matchups.
Bennett's already had Lucas Stalla and Billy George pushing him in the room. Yeah. Now with the return of Steve Bozak, Craig Scott pushes up to 197. So now there's 4 guys that are capable at 197. It's a stacked weight for Cornell. So if Jace Bennett doesn't continue to wrestle well, there's certainly somebody who's willing to come in and step in his stead. Well, at heavyweight for Cornell will be Striker Lane. He's performed well this year. Very close match against 4th-ranked Jared Trice. But man, oh man, does he have a tough road out at the grapple of the guard. He's got number 2, Don Bradley from Missouri, and number 3, Alan, you say it.
Goliath.
Alan Goliath from Oklahoma State, from Moscow, Russia. My Russian isn't great, so I'll let Chris handle that pronunciation for us when we go on the broadcast on Sunday. But man, he's going to have a tough road, Chris. Can Striker keep it close with these guys?
Striker's wrestling probably the best ever in his career right now. You know, he wrestled Ben Applin out at Vegas. He beat him at the time, top 10 kid. He's making strides. This is an uphill climb, though. This is going to be a real uphill climb for Striker. He's just going to have to be real strong on top. Hopefully maybe get a turn or two. Goliath's not a huge heavyweight, and he has injury problems in the past. His last 2 seasons he's been tearing it up and then he gets hurt. So, you know, if he can maybe push pace, maybe he can hang in there with these guys, but it's going to be tough sledding for him.
Well, Cornell ranked 8th, Missouri ranked 7th, Oklahoma State 2nd. Chris, I expect these to both be close duels. I won't ask you, Jeremy. I know what you think is going to happen. But Chris, how do you think these will play out?
I think that Cornell definitely is going to come up on top of the Missouri match. I have it 6 matches to 4. The Oklahoma State match, there's a lot of what ifs and what could happen here or there. It's pretty close right now. You got to say the advantage goes to Oklahoma State, but Cornell's going to be right in the mix in that match as well.
And we'll see what happens. You can listen to the live broadcast here in the Finger Lakes region on 1160 AM or worldwide at 1160ESPN.com. Sunday starting at 10:45. The matches have been moved back a half an hour. Cornell will wrestle Missouri at 11. They will wrestle Oklahoma State at 1. As I said, our full coverage, Chris and myself, live at Madison Square Garden starting at 10:45 on 1160 ESPN. For Chris Harrington, Jeremy Spates, I'm Matt Schultz. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Big Red Zone Preview, brought to you by Advantage Sport and Fitness, D Squared Construction, and Defense Soap. We'll see you before the scuffle.